up? Hey everybody, how's everyone doing today? That's what I like to hear. Last day, but we had fun, right? We're about to have more fun, right? Awesome. So I'm just making a few quick announcements before we get things rolling. I'm not doing any announcements for her yet, but she is back there, I promise. So first and foremost, if you're here the past few days, you've heard me talking about flashes on your phones and cameras. If you could just turn those off for us, but please take lots of photographs. Like I said before, we love seeing those on Twitter and Facebook and everything. Next, we have something going on called FlipON.TV. You've probably heard of it by now. And if you go on to FlipON.TV, you can watch all these panels streaming live right now. As a matter of fact, if you look towards the back, you can see one of our camera guys recording as I'm talking. Next, cell phones. If you could just put those on vibrate or mute for us. And if you have any phone calls, if you could just take them out in the hall, that'd be great. Lastly, we have a microphone right there in the middle. So if you guys have questions, we like to hear them. So please use the microphone if we get a chance to do questions. So for now, I'm going to leave you and see if she's ready. All right, guys?
Hello. My name is Jamala Henderson. I am a newscaster at KUOW Public Radio in Seattle. This is my first time ever doing a Comic-Con here in Seattle, so I'm really excited because I am a fellow geek, just like you guys. And so I have the pleasure of announcing Danai Gurira. I heard her say her name on the internet, and she rolls her R's so amazingly. I'd like to have her say her name, because I can't do it justice. She's a playwright. She's an actress. She's got award-winning plays under her belt. And she starred in the acclaimed film The Visitor, which is a great film that you should catch if you haven't seen it already. She's been on Broadway and numerous television shows, including Life on Mars, Lie to Me, Law and Order, and Law and Order CI. She's also been on Treme, an amazing show on HBO. So, of course, we all know her for her amazing work as the amazing character Michonne on The Walking Dead. Please welcome Danai Gurira.
You'll change your mind after a couple weeks.
My first question, how are you?
Good, how are y'all doing?
How's everybody? Are you surviving this weekend? How's Seattle for you?
Oh, it's great, it's great. I love Seattle. I've been here a couple times before, mainly as a writer, pretty exclusively as a writer, but I've always loved it, and it's got a beautiful energy, so I'm having a good time.
All right.
Yeah.
So, how did you catch the acting bug? What got you into acting?
Oh God! Oh wow! What did? I mean, I grew up in Harare, Zimbabwe, which is southern Africa, and it was a very idyllic time period when I grew up there. So I was in primary school and got asked to be the lead in a play, and it wasn't actually, it was a little skit, and my headmaster, I can call them principals, was like, "You're a good actress." I was like, "What?" Anyway, moving on. I was a jock. I was a swimming, track, hockey, tennis jock. That was what I did. I was very competitive, and I wasn't thinking about anything dramatic. But then I guess a little later, I was up for a role. It's just a class play, and it was like between me and a boy, and it was actually a male role, and foreboding things to come, I guess, in terms of playing tough people. And I was asked to, we were both asked to audition for the class. And so I did my audition, and then he just looked at me and he said, I forfeit. And so I was like, okay. So I played this dude, and that was my first kind of full role. And then I went to high school, and I just got much more involved in theater and just went from there. I just really enjoyed it and kept going and created a community around it, really.
Wow, wow. And what keeps you acting and writing?
It's interesting because there are times where I'm really ready. I think most actors will say this, where you're just ready to just stop acting. I mean, acting it can be quite excruciating, and it's so exposing, and it takes so much out of you. And so there are times you just kind of want to just shrink away from it. And I think every time I've actually felt that urge, a job has come that has made me have to step more into it. And actually, I was moving to the West Coast to pursue more my writing than my acting, and then this job came right at that moment, and it's happened a few times before.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, it's always something I feel I'm called to do, and I believe in doing. But there are times you're like, I can do something else for a while, because it can really exhaust you and take a lot out of you. But I love it. It's always when it feels right. It's such an amazing experience to do and to be a part of.
But it seems like it's got to take a lot out of you, physically, emotionally.
Oh, I like that stuff.
You do?
I like that stuff. That's why I
Okay.
loved Michonne, because I was like, yeah, bring on something that challenges me. What I can't stand is the procedural dramas. No offense to them, but for me to act in them full time would be really, really excruciating.
Wow.
Just the whole dead face, just talking, jargon about stuff you don't really care about. You know what I mean? But being in the midst of something dire and something where you're riddled with trauma, and you're riddled with survival instincts, and life and death is right there the whole time, and you have to give your all to every moment, and you have to be very physically engaged. That's what I loved about doing this part, was how much it was going to require of me. I'm from theater, so I love that. A lot of TV can be very neck up, and that's not this show. And so I love that. I love that I was going to be actually really taken out of my comfort zone physically, because that does not happen often on television. Maybe in films, action films, but not that much in television. Wow. So I was really excited to be a part of that. I've always wanted to do action stuff, so that was fun.
I'm curious to know what you feel like you don't know about Michonne yet. Is there anything that you feel like you haven't discovered about who she is?
Great question. It's very interesting. I think tonight's episode is going to be a very interesting one for Michonne. I think that she is, and I think that's already becoming clear, she has been going through somewhat of a healing, because she chooses to go back to this community and not keep fighting. She chooses to actually become a part of people again. And like the week that we see her actually I don't even know I don't know what makes it into the episodes anymore. So if I say something that didn't happen, I'll just be like, okay, I guess it's in the editing room floor. But there's a week that she goes back to the prison, and he's not very interested in her coming back. Rick, he's kind of sick of her, kind of dodging, speaking plainly, and but he knows she's an asset. And she comes back and she sleeps. Does that happen? Okay. You just never know. She comes back and she sleeps in the presence of Herschel. Now, the idea of Michonne falling asleep, that's actually kind of monumental, to sleep, to actually let go of control to that extent in the presence of these people and allow this man to tend to her while she's unconscious. And she was concussed. But that aside, she could will herself to stay awake knowing her. But, that sort of a thing was really about her going through a healing. It's actually her allowing herself to become part of people and to that extent again. And I think it continues to happen. And talking to Andrea last week, I know that made it, I saw it, was healing for her too. She needed to see this woman got how much she had hurt her. And I think once she saw that, she was able to start healing herself from all of that pain. So what I'd find interesting going forward is seeing her. Well, if I say something, then I spoil what you know what I mean? Like, it's a really tricky question. That's a good one. That's a good one. Folks are usually so blunt, like, what's gonna happen? Like, that was good. So I will say, you know, it's just really, it's interesting to see her sort of let go of the wounds that she's been functioning through that have caused her to have such a tough mask. And seeing that start to take place is exciting, and it felt good to do for her. Yeah.
All right. Well, just a quick note to say that there is a mic here, and I'm going to ask a few more questions, but then if you guys have questions for Danai, please line up at the mic so that we can have those done. I've got about 10 more minutes or so, and then, you know, we want to hear what you have to ask her, but of course, she's not going to be able to answer questions about spoilers, so keep those in your pocket. Let's see. So I was wondering, when it comes to Michonne, I've heard that you don't think that you're too much like her. So I'm wondering, what could she learn from you?
Well, no, I do think I'm like her. I think that yes, I think that if I were to step into a zone where everything was gone, like there was no more rule of law, there was no more society to depend on, and I'd suffered that level of loss and trauma, which we don't know the specifics of that yet for her, but obviously they were extreme. I think I definitely have a fighter in me. Okay. You know, I'm a tough girl. I've always been a tough girl. I just in a world where I can speak my way through things. You know, I can use my words and they actually get me somewhere. But I don't think that she thinks herself to be in that world. You know what I mean? So I think that if I were to step into the realm of that level of you know, loss of society and apocalyptic mess, I think I'd become a bit of a warrior too, as much as I could. I don't know if I could be as good as her, but I think I'd become something like that. I definitely have a fighter in me. I'm definitely not, I can't bear injustice. I can't bear things being misperceived or perceived in ways that hurt other people unnecessarily. And I push against stuff like that. So I think I do have a fighter in me. It just comes out differently because I'm in a normal society. I do think that she could probably learn from me in terms of using her words a bit more. You know, and I think that her trauma is connected to a certain degree of not having having trusted the wrong people with her words. And I think the idea of deciding to stop using them as much and start, you know, trying to think 10 paces ahead of whoever she's dealing with and give them as little information as possible is a part of how she transformed into becoming the Michonne of the apocalypse. So I think her trauma was attached to communication, and that's why she's not a talker. But it's a question, and you know, we'll see if that gets revealed or not, how much of a talker she was before. But at the time that she's in, I think it makes sense that she'd resolved to do what she's doing, which is to speak very little. But you know, that you know, she's got to start opening up. So I would say she could learn to use her words a little bit more from me.
So you say you've got a fighter in you, but you've also drawn on some other sources to kind of bring this fighter to life. What were those sources, and how did you kind of draw on that to create Michonne?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, Michonne is in such, you know, she's, you know, in the first half of the season especially, she's deeply attached to her trauma. So I had to deeply attach to trauma in order to connect to her, to what those traumas were for her. And also the intensity of how she thinks, you know, the idea of thinking about, okay, how, the beauty of how she thinks is that she never thinks she's going to lose. So she doesn't envision loss. She doesn't envision at the end of this fight the governor will have won. She envisions at the end of this fight I will have won and I'll walk out with his head, you know, or his eye. But you know, she just always envisions victory, and she really has trust in her abilities to make sure her mission is accomplished. And I find I want to learn more from that. You know what I mean? I'm a visionary too in some regards, but I mean she's something else with that. What was the question? I wasn't going to say
what
something
sources
else.
you drew on to create
Oh,
her. And
yes.
I'm thinking specifically of female soldiers from Sierra
Yeah,
Leone.
from Liberia.
From
yeah,
Liberia.
it really was something that I likened it to. Was one of the plays I wrote was about Liberian women in war, and when I watched The Walking Dead, because I'm a scaredy cat, so I only watched it when I got the audition, and I was like, oh God, I guess I have to watch this, and I knew it was scary, and I'd seen little glimpses of it, you know, and I've been like, I'm never gonna watch that show. And little did I know. So then I watched it, and I thought it was so amazing, but I thought it was like a war zone to me, because, you know, I'm not heavily into zombies, though now I kind of love them. But at the time, what really attached to me was it was like a war zone, you know? It was a place where, you know, everything had shut down. And that, to me, reminded me of Liberia, because I'd researched, it's a Western African country that was in war until just a little under 10 years ago. And I'd gone there and researched the women who'd done many things, but some of the women had become really formidable rebel fighters. And I'd seen a New York Times article in 2003 with these women on the cover that were just walking down the street in Liberia, and they were like some of the most feared people in this war zone. And they were like this women, they were all like, they had really cool outfits on. They like, their hair was done, they had little braids, like they were like, you know, really slinky little shirts and jeans, and AK-47 slung around their backs. And everyone was scared crapless of them. And I said, I have got to write this story. I've got to research these women. And I did. And then the story became about much more than them when I went to Liberia and met many different types of people and different women who'd done other things. But the story became about them as well. And then when I watched The Walking Dead and when I researched Michonne, I said, oh, she's one of those women from that war zone. Those women are real, you know? I mean, they had gone through serious trauma when the war broke out. Serious trauma. I mean, stuff that's unspeakable. And they resolved that they were going to actually fight against the forces that were working against their safety, and they were going to become the most forbidden. And, you know, it's like that hell hath no fury thing. That is real. I mean, these men were scared of them. And they are really well known for that still to today. So it was a very interesting parallel to be like, Michonne became very immediate to me, because I was like, those women exist. This isn't a comic book. This is real. To me, it became very real. So that's how I really connected to her. Because I always thought, well, if I go into a war zone, I hope to become one of these women soldiers. And so, bizarrely, I didn't know one day I'd kind of play a woman soldier.
That's kind of one of the things about The Walking Dead that's so amazing, is how real the relationships are and how real all the things and the emotions that people are going through. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine being in a post-apocalyptic world, but there's so many things. The trauma, I mean, it's like the walking trauma. Everybody's running around and trying to deal with that. And so I'm wondering, what did you get from seeing those portrayals of those women that you really latched onto for Michonne?
Really, firstly, it's the unreadableness. You know, they're not women who you're gonna see them and they're gonna be like, this happened to me and I'm gonna, you know what I mean? No, you're not gonna see that. You really can't read them. You know, they have a certain, they've developed a degree of a way of looking at the world that is not for you to really know what's going on in their brains, you know, and that was something very interesting about them. But also, you know, just that that belief that they couldn't lose, you know, they've been through it all, you know, so try me, you know, and I loved that about them, and that was very Michonne-like as well. So yeah, it was tons of things like that, and just the way they lived in their bodies. They had a belief in how they could use their bodies to accomplish their next goal, and it was really not in question.
So what do you love about zombies now?
Well, it's weird, you know, because after I got through the first 2 seasons, when I was after I'd gotten the job, I watched the second season. And I was just so into them, and I was like, what is this now? What is wrong with me? And I went to Greg Nicotero. He's the one who does all the zombie work, like the genius behind all the zombie work. And he has this place in Los Angeles that's like, you know, where they do all this work for all these films. I mean, every film you can think of, really, he's done. He does all of Quentin Tarantino's films. He does so many different films. He does a lot of Wes Craven's films. I mean, he's just the guru. And so his workshop is full of folks like just, you know, putting a little hair one by one into the skulls of some nasty ghoul, and you see like what's his name? Oh my God, Del Toro. What's his first name?
Benicio.
Benicio del
Yes.
Toro. You see his head like up on a shelf with the thing in it from Sin City. You know, just like everything. Like everything is just hanging around there all the time. And it's an amazing place. And you know, you see like Jamie Foxx's body mold lying around for Django, and Waltz's body mold hanging around for Django. And you're just like, what the hell? So I was in love with all this stuff by then, and the work that he does. And there are all these zombie busts around, and I have like this picture of me in a zombie bust looking like we're in love, and so I was just like in love with it by then.
Wow.
I just thought it was such an amazing art form that this man does. And then because during the show, like that pilot, like with the bicycle zombie, the zombie girl who's like crawling without any legs, like that sort of that was heartbreaking. There's a thing that he's able to bring through his creations that gets you, in a way that I can't put into words.
The remnants of humanity, maybe?
Yeah, and the pain and the trauma of it, and the level of horror and just the sort of unredeemable feeling of loss, it's just amazing that he accomplishes in these creations. So I was in love. By the time I was working on it, I was totally in love with zombies.
No more nightmares, no more zombie nightmares.
No. And I know I learned from Michonne, they're slower and dumber than me. So really, what's there to fear? Take off their jaws and their arms, and they're useless. And they're your pack mules.
Katana, that's pretty amazing. And you do some pretty amazing work with it. What's that
It's all
like?
me, by the way. Some people ask, is there a double? No, there's no double.
There's no double.
There's no double.
So what did you have to do to make it feel like it was part of your arm?
You just have to work with it a lot. You know what I mean? It's just that thing where you can't microwave the process. You just have to work with it a lot. And I got great trainers, and we worked a lot. And initially, it was just really painful, and I was just like, ow. And I thought I was athletic till now. And then it became, slowly but surely, it became something I started to enjoy, started to slowly get the hang of, and started to just love. You started to love the feel of this weapon in your hands, and you started to, really started to feel like a part of my arm, and I started to understand the connection. And then I started to develop Michonne through it, because I started to understand that connection she had and why. It makes you feel powerful when you can execute moving it well, and when you move it the way it tells you to move it. And then there's like, there's a very powerful feeling, because you can do so much with that thing if you use it right. And so then it became enjoyable. And it's a lifelong process. One of my trainers, he's Japanese. He's been using it since he was 8. Wow. So like, I'm not like, no. It's a lifelong process. But for Michonne, it was really like learning about it through its own specificity, but then also through the character's specificity. And when that started to happen, when you start to feel a character through how you're moving a weapon, that was pretty cool.
All right. Questions? Or if you've got questions, start getting to the mic, please. Yes. All right. My time is up, so please, what's your
Awesome.
question?
Love that.
So
I'm gonna take a picture of
Michonne
that.
is obviously a very stoic character. She keeps a lot inside. Do you find that challenging to play? And if not,
What do you think?
I would say yes. But if not, what is the most challenging part as an actor for playing a character like Michonne?
Yeah, I do think that there were aspects when I walked into the writer's room and they're like, so she doesn't speak much. I was like, oh, really? But it started to make sense. It was really about learning about. So yeah, initially that was an interesting, tricky thing, because it really was about But it also allowed me to have her have such a palpable thought life, because she's just thinking. Yeah. And she's analyzing rather, and she's strategizing. So it became like all about employing her thoughts. And then there are just times she's disgusted and she's ready to show that very easily. There's certain emotions she's comfortable with. Yeah. But it was interesting in the beginning, but then slowly it became more just who she was. Why would she say that? And then you're like, Michonne wouldn't say that. She wouldn't even say that. She wouldn't even give that person that piece of information. For what? Yeah. So then it became like, oh, that's who she is. But initially, that was tricky for me.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, thank you for being here. It's been a great week for me.
Sure.
I teach a university course called Gender and Ethnicity, and for my media section, I actually show several scenes of Andrea and Michonne interacting. And
Oh, Lord.
yeah, oh yeah.
I knew it, because I was in college and I took courses like that. I was like, they're going to
Yes.
research us and they're going to say,
So
oh,
I get
God.
different reactions from students, and a lot of the students are catching up with the show. Maybe I make them work so hard, I don't know. But, you know, I get my students of color, not only do they identify with her as living this, you know, even just living all of this trauma, but also they feel for her having to deal with some clueless white girl that's Andrea. So they reduce her, Andrea, to this clueless white girl who's like, what the hell is she doing? Then I get other students that are like, oh, Michonne, she's very off-putting and very uncooperative. She doesn't play well with others, and Andrea, poor Andrea. So it's
funny.
everybody becomes a
Love that.
caricature, yeah.
Yeah.
So have you gotten any reactions to the characters being, oh, it's so off-putting, or do you have people saying it's so hard to like Michonne? Have you gotten that from
I've gotten people, they think she's, you know, an enigma. She's too, you know, she's too quiet. She's too silent. We can't read her, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, that's the plan. You know, I mean, literally, the writers sat me down and they said, she talks very little and she's impossible to read. That's what they designed her to do. Now she does, I think that's a great beginning for a couple reasons. Number one, I think it allows a lot of the other characters. I mean, people were complaining that in season 2 they were talking too much. And then you bring a character who doesn't talk much, and then they're like, she doesn't talk enough. It's like, y'all, we just can't please you. You just can't please some folk. But, you know, at the beginning, it makes sense to me in this way. Number one, you see a lot of the core group. You see how their traumas unfold. You see Amy die in Andrea's arms. You see the loss of Lori for Rick. You know, you see things happen for those characters. But Michonne comes in, and it makes sense. It makes sense to the world. She comes in after she's gone through those things, you know? So she's going to be someone who's living in her PTSD in the specificity of who she is, which might involve her not wanting to be Miss Congeniality. And so, yeah, the thing is with Michonne is she doesn't care if she's off-putting. If you are off-put by her, that does not bother her. You know, she's thinking about the next thing she needs to get done. You know what I mean? So that's okay. I think it's great for people to have different reactions. Some people can't bear Andrea, some people can't bear Michonne, and I think that's great. I think that's, you know, what it should be. It's just drama. It's going to hit people differently. And the thing that I love about this show, though, which is, I guess, not common in all shows, is that the characters, it's so character-driven, and the characters really do shift. They don't stay one thing the entire time. Yeah. And that's been really enjoyable for me to play. So what'll be interesting is, you know, I know what happens by episode 16 for both of those characters, and it'll be interesting to see what they say at the end of the season, because they have to understand they're only halfway through the movie. Like, they're watching a movie that happens to be 16 episodes. They have to get to the end of the episodes, and then we'll see what they say. But regardless, you know, I don't think either Andrea's also a really tough chick. I don't think either of them really care.
It'll be interesting when I show the next episodes or something.
Say that again?
It'll be interesting when I teach the class again and try to add more scenes. But
Yeah. I think it'll be very interesting for them to see right through to the end of the season.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh my God. So, like, I was the one that asked if you could live with me. And
She wants Michonne to live with her. I'm not sure if I want Michonne to live with me.
okay, so, like, I'm, like, fangirling out right now. Okay, like, who supported you through, like, your whole journey of, like, starting your acting career and, like, writing all these scripts and stuff, like, I love you so much.
Thank you. You're sweet. I love you too. I was really lucky. I had a great community. Like there's a great group of people I worked with. It's called Children's Performing Arts Workshop, and that was in Zimbabwe. It still exists, and I was like one of the founding members. And this guy, Robert McLaren, we call him Uncle Robert, and he was one of my best friend's dads, and he was the founder, and he was a professor of theater and English and English literature, and he really actually introduced us to taking the craft seriously. even though we were like 13, 14 years old. You know, the idea of even just warming up and connecting to what we were doing in a very concentrated, focused way. And that was really helpful. And then I had a community around me of fellow people who were being trained the same way. So we took our work very seriously from then. I sort of understood just from that foundation that you can't take this craft lightly. You can't do it to, you know, show off or to be a spectacle. It's a craft and you have to be very serious about it. So that was the one experience, I would say, was that. And then through high school, it was the same thing. But I also had parents who, I won't say they were massively supportive, they just weren't intrusive. They were academics and they were like, do what you love. That's what we did. Like my dad's a chemistry professor and he, you know, a lot of people were like, well, you know, with that level of smarts, you could have been a doctor. He's like, medicine is a soft science. And you're like, okay. I don't have any of that, by the way. No science in me. Don't know where that went. But, you know, his idea of doing what he loved versus what other people told him to do really fed me to do the same thing. But they were kind of like, we have to, I was their fourth child. So they were like, you know, the other ones were in college and I was still like just starting off high school because I was kind of the mistake baby. And, and so I'm the only kid in the house and they're like, we have to take you to, what? Rehearsal again? You know, like, yeah, rehearsal means you rehearse. You have to pick me up, you know? So they were like, at night, you know, because it's like, that sounds like the exhausting youngest child. So I became kind of like, well, then you just have to do it, Mom and Dad. Like, I'm not asking anymore. This is what I do, and you have to support it, you know? And that actually helped me become a pretty independent kid, you know, because I wasn't trying to please them. And sometimes that's a good thing. I was just doing what I loved, as they told me to. So now, I mean, they love that I do what I do. And they've never, ever, they've always wanted me just to do what I love. And I think that was very helpful as well.
Okay, I love you. I can't wait to get my picture with you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah. If a zombie apocalypse were to start, would you act like Michonne, or would you be entirely different?
I think I would be a Michonne, I hope. I always think Michonne is kind of like Serena Williams in an apocalypse. You know what I mean? Like, think about that. And I kind of hope I have a little Serena in me, you know? So I think, you know, I would, like, it's really about how do you lock it down? How do you take care of yourself? How do you try and take care of those you love? And, you know, and you have to sort of start thinking like a soldier, you know? So I hope that that's what I would do, and get a weapon that doesn't need ammo and that, you know, is silent and that can do a very precise job. So I think I would hold. I have 3 katanas. 2 of them don't really work well, but I'd hold on to the 3rd one.
All right, thank you.
Hi, so I love you and your character in the show, and I'm a fan.
Thank you.
But in recent months, watching the show has been, I guess the word is problematized for me. On one level, I'm still watching it as a fan. On another level, I now have to sort of view it through a sociological lens because of some stuff I've been reading online in terms of critiques about the roles of race and gender in the show. And I'm just wondering if, well, I'd like to get your thoughts on the role that race and gender play in the show. And if in your opinion, from your perspective as an actor on the show, if that controversy, if that discussion, that dialogue is in any way affecting the writers, if they're aware of that, if you think it's affecting the way that they're approaching the writing of the episodes. And secondly, I'd just like to give you an opening to talk about the charity with which you're involved that is mentioned in the program. I just am really interested to hear more about the charity that you're involved with. So.
You know, because I come from such a sociological background from college, from how I write my plays. I write my plays from a perspective of, they're always about, like, with African women leads, women of African descent as leading characters. So for me, I'm always very entrenched in that sort of concept of things. But and you know, also being from Africa, so I'm looking at things always from the perspective of people who are you rarely hear their voices. So, I mean, sometimes I really take a lot of these things tongue-in-cheek, or like with, you know, a big grain of salt, you know, just because it's sort of like everyone always has some sort of critique or thought about things, and you're like, okay. You know, so I've heard it all, I've thought about it all, so it is kind of like, okay, calm down, you know, and you know some of it is just gonna pass because, you know, you're only watching a portion of something, you know what I mean? And things shift as you go through an entire season. So we sit there like, get through the season. You know what I mean? Just get to episode 16 and then have the conversation. You know, it's tricky when you're watching something at episode 6 and you're talking about something in its full validity. And I know that there's the idea of, you know, I don't know, are you talking about like the ideas of like T-Dog, or, you know, the fact that he left so sadly, and, you know, those sort of things, but and then the idea, but then Tyrese is here, so it's like, okay, now there's Tyrese and there's Sasha, you know, and you know, so there's just all these things that it's like, these are just like, they're constant ins and outs. It's a world that's full of that, you know what I mean? And so people die and new people come, and that's exactly what happened. And, you know, you're just getting to know the two new characters. So I think, and of course, you know, everyone knows Tyrese is a massive character from the comic book, so, you know, it's not like he's going anywhere right now. So, like, it's just that sort of a thing where it's like, just watch the movie. You know, that's what goes on in my head, because I understand people push their buttons that get pushed to people very quickly, and then they have stuff to say very quickly. And I'm that chick. Like, I was writing my, you know, my little papers, critiquing stuff, like my little media class on race and representation in media. You know, I've done it all myself. That's why I'm very calm about it all, because I know like, there are buttons that get pushed and people have stuff to say very quickly. But I think that it's a very well thought out process in terms of how the story is getting told. I think Robert Kirkman did an amazing thing. He did create major characters who were not of European descent. He created Michonne, he created Tyrese, you know, he created some, and others who haven't even come up yet. He created Morgan, you know, so, you know, there are all these characters that were in the comic book and are on the screen. And so it's just a question of letting it all, and all those characters I just mentioned, you know, they are alive. So it's like, let the story tell itself. That's always what I have to say to folks. Just, let's get to the end of it and then we'll have a chat. That's pointless at this juncture. In terms of the charity, I don't know, are you talking about Almasi?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, I don't know if it's an interesting thing. I mean, I created that with a woman in Zimbabwe just because there's a need to really professionalize Zimbabwe's dramatic arts. And the way that it's been handled, I went home in 2011 and handled a play of mine being produced there. I was so horrified by how messed up the system is in some ways. It's one big fish and he's utterly problematic. Let me leave it at that. And I was like, there needs to be other routes for people to get training, for people to be professionally employed, and for there to be standards connected to that, and structures that support the artist and support them actually being able to function with dignity. And, you know, there's also the issue of too many donors who are from the West, you know, diplomatic corps donors who are absolute bureaucrats, who then tell you, you can't do this, you can't do that because it's our money. And they don't know anything about the craft, but because they're in a country that needs the money, these artists are begging for money, they go to them and they do whatever they want. So that actually lessens the craft, because people are saying, oh, you know, do a play about, or a TV thing or whatever about baby dumping. And then they have to go do that instead of doing what they really want to do as artists. And so I was just getting horrified by the entire system. So I've created an organization, and I'm just going to fund it from here and not deal with any of that diplomatic mess. Bureaucrats deciding the craft of the artist. It's crazy. And that's what we're doing. So and we created a writing series there, like a play reading series there, the idea of listening to dramatic literature, and understanding we have to create dramatic literature as a country so that people can pick it up years from now and do it the way you can right now with whoever, Shakespeare or Stoppard, or the bureaucrats, because my partner in Zimbabwe, she shouldn't have done this, but she went and talked to the American embassy, and the American embassy lady was like, oh, that won't work, that's not sustainable, it's not going to teach anything. And I'm like, okay, so I have the MFA from Tisch NYU, and you're telling me that teaching people how to read plays is not going to do anything for this country. Okay. So I just funded it myself. And I funded this series, and it's been going on. It's doing really well. And then the first play we read was Raisin in the Sun. And then they come to us and they say, so on Black History Month, we want to use your Raisin in the Sun reading to use in high schools. Can we work with you? We're like, oh, really? You know, so it's an interesting process dealing with the arts and stuff in Zimbabwe. But yeah, that's basically what it is. We're trying to really just bring some professional excellence and awareness educationally to Zimbabwe's dramatic arts.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when we first saw Michonne on The Walking Dead, she was very hidden from view, the hood and everything. What led to the kind of disrobing of that taken off, just her adventure with Andrea being more in the forefront, not a hidden? Was that more of like a plot point just as a teaser to not show you right at the end of the second season? Or was it more of a character-driven?
It was both.
Both.
She uses her walkers, which Andrea copied in this last episode.
Yes, that was intense.
And I'm watching Lori in the talkback. She's like, I got my guardian angel. I'm like, honey, you got that from me. I'm your guardian angel. Yeah, so basically she uses them as deterrent. And so when she uses her hood, it helps her not be, felt or perceived by the walkers. So having her hood on, because as you know, Andrea was being attacked there were tons of them coming, and they were all around, and she was fully exposed. But of course, if Michonne comes in that environment, that's where she's going to put her hood on, and she's going to keep her walkers close, because that's, it's deterrent, and so she's not going to expose herself fully in that environment.
Are we possibly going to see the hood come back?
She uses the hood.
I don't think I've seen it since then.
Well, I've worn it, so you'll see it. It's still in her wardrobe. She throws it on every now and then.
Hi. I just want to say that I came from Brazil for the con, and
Oh,
I
cool.
was most excited about seeing you. So
Oh,
it's
thank
really nice
you.
to see you.
Thank you.
I was wondering, when did you come to the United States and why? And if you have read the comic book of The Walking Dead before or after acting in this show.
Yes, I was actually born in the United States. So my parents came here for education and all that in the 60s or so, and they got married here. They were both Zimbabwean, but then they re-met up here. They actually knew each other from high school. And so they got married here, and then they had all their kids here. So we moved back to Zimbabwe when I was about 5. So that's where I was raised, but I was actually American born. And I read, growing up, I read Asterix and Obelix. Did anyone read that?
Yeah.
I read Tintin.
Oh, I love that one.
Don't know why. Now that I think about that. And I read, Archie comics.
Oh, cool.
That was the stuff I read in terms of comic books. I did not touch the scary stuff. I was a scaredy cat. I was a kid who'd watched 10 minutes of American Werewolf in London and slept in my sister's bed for 2 months. So I couldn't do those. But I did read them after I got the job. I mean, I looked at them online, of course, as I was researching the part. I was, there's a lot of snippets of it online. So I had an idea of who she was, how she was drawn, how she came across on the page. But then, of course, once I got the role, I did a lot of reading. But then I had to stop, because then I started to get confused. I was like, what, did that happen in the comic book or in the show? And I was like, okay, I can't read this anymore. I had to focus on what was, what I had to portray on television.
Yeah. Could you see your last name for us?
Gurira.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think people usually of Spanish or Portuguese descent could probably say it pretty well because of those R's. Gurira. Yeah, you guys turned that second R into a D, though. Gurira. Gurira, yeah. A little tongue twister.
I got to go and see Michael Rooker on Friday, and I asked him a question, and the question was, what was the main reason he went in the prison and talked to you? And he told me, have you seen her? She's hot. So I was and he was saying, yeah, we can get a little romance in there. And I'm wondering what your response is to that.
Oh, Rooker. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. It's great. Yeah. What can I say? I mean, I think that scene, interestingly for Michonne, it did release her. I think she's getting a lot of release right now. That scene with Andrea allowed her to let go of something, and I think that scene with Rooker, with Merle, allowed her to, she'd really wanted to get back at him initially. But then I think she just, she really took him in during that scene in a way where it's like, he's in such a weakened position, and he's really not the core problem. He's just weak to her. When you actually realize, oh, I can let that one go. That's just not my problem. He has no allies. He was a yes man to a bigger problem. And so he lost all his like heavy significance to her in that regard at that moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I love the fact that you used your experience in Liberia and writing that play about the Liberian women, that you can see how that informs what you're doing with Michonne. And obviously you're continuing to work with different projects in Africa. So I'm curious if you think, besides the organization that you've set up, which I think is an amazing mission, by the way,
Thank you.
besides that, do you think you'll continue to write plays that come out of your experiences in Africa? And can you see your experience with Michonne like reflecting back on that?
Sure. I am in the midst of writing stuff. I'm up to beyond my neck in expected commissions that I have not completed. So yeah, I'm writing all the time. Plays that the play. There's a play that's out right now that it's part one of a trilogy, and folks are waiting for the rest of the trilogy. And they're waiting. And like, I'm on a TV show. They don't care. In theater, they don't care what you're doing in television. They don't watch television. They're like, she's killing zombies? What? Where's our play? So, yeah, I'm still very obligated to my playwriting. There's no way around that, and I'm thankful for that. In terms of Michonne, I mean, I guess as an actor, as an artist, as a storyteller, it all kind of melds back. There's so many lessons I learned, both on screen and off screen, that in the course of just doing this first season, that really have informed me and taught me things and grown me up. And that'll always affect how I handle everything. So, all those things always sort of bleed back into each other. Exactly how at this moment I can't say, but I have no doubt that Michonne will bleed back into my other work.
And the play that you mentioned that's part of a trilogy, what is that play so we know to look for the rest of it?
Are you the one I met who saw it, right?
The Convert? Is it
Yeah,
the Convert?
yeah.
That's going to be a trilogy?
Yeah, that's part one of the trilogy. So why don't you tell folks about it?
Yes, The Convert's amazing. I highly recommend it. And I think since you come from Zimbabwe, or that your family came from there, if you want a sense of the history that she's dealing with and that she's drawing from, I think this is fair to say, in your own work. Find that play. If you can see it live, it's even better because they use the language of the area on stage. But I think you'll get a good sense of where the woman who embodies Michonne, where she's coming from. So thank you.
And there's a bit of a Michonne in the play, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
She's a badass. Yeah, in fact, I think she actually gives Michonne a run for her money.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
That's cool. Thank you.
Hello, I'm a huge fan of your work.
Thank you.
My question is, what was it like living up to the legacy that Michonne left in the comics?
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, to some extent, you're hearing that, how important this character is to people, and that's really scary. But then, and you're like, I hope, but at the end of the day, everything I do, I just try and give everything I've got to it, and so it was no exception. I just was going to give everything I had to giving her life. But then on the other hand, there was also a mission, like an arc or an idea of how to unravel her or how to reveal her that my showrunner and his writers had. And so being someone who writes stories myself, I understand and I respect stepping into a vision that writers have and bringing that to life. So it was really about trusting their vision also. Because, would Danai maybe have, interpreted her in certain ways? Perhaps. But I also I was respecting their vision of how she was going to be drawn out, and it wasn't a quick process. You weren't supposed to get to know her in the first 2 or 3 episodes. It was supposed to be a long process of getting to know this woman. So yeah, it was really about those two things. It was about giving it all I had, and then also respecting that the vision of how we were going to bring her to life was going to be different from the book. In the sense, not entirely different. The essence of her was very much there. But the idea of, in the book, her and Rick become friends instantly. Not so much in the show. And I liked that, you know, and Andy was like, they shouldn't. The circumstances do not allow for it. And I was like, that is true. Because I was like, can't they just be friends? But it was like, no. And it was like, they shouldn't. And the tension of that is good, you know? Because it was like the circumstances were just so different. And, you know, she was not someone who was forthcoming or willing to be open and show that she really was a team player. Though she actually was, she wasn't willing to show it very easily. And also, you know, he's gone through a lot of trauma. He'd trusted the wrong people and lost his wife. So it was just at the moment that they met, and she was in her trauma, losing Andrea, there was no way they were going to be instant friends. And you know, I think I was like, the audience might be like, that's not what happened in the book. But it's like, yeah, but the show can't do exactly what the book does. That would ultimately be kind of boring. So I love how they sort of pull from the book, but they also just tease it out. Like Michonne starts off really cut off, and you can't really get to know her very well. But and the governor starts off, and he's Mr. Congeniality, and then they sort of start to do that. And I think that's kind of cool. And that's not from the book.
Okay. Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Michonne is such a loner and doesn't really let anybody in. So I was wondering, what was it that made her decide to take Andrea along with her on her journeys and take someone with her?
Well, honestly, I don't think you can say she is this or she is that. I think she has been this, or this is where she was at that moment. You know what I mean? I think people, you know, they go through things and then they shift in accordance with, you know, perhaps what they really, really want. And then they are who they are based on what they feel they've had to be. You know, and I think that there's a great scene I auditioned with, actually. It's not in the show, but I auditioned with it. It was a dummy scene. And I think it really kind of speaks to all of that in the sense that, you know, because Andrea, the Andrea character asks her, why did you take me along? And this is the idea that, you know, you actually feel like you're going to start losing your mind if you're in a world where it's just you and zombies. you do, and she has a palpable and powerful sense of her own preservation. You understand you need people, you know, and then you have to work through your own mess to actually be able to really deal with people. But you understand you need them. And that's what her reaching out to I'll just get this one person. And she saw something in Andrea that made her go, okay, this is a cool chick. This is a cool, strong chick like me, and I can respect her, and she's an asset, not a liability. And that came to whatever it came to. But initially, that experience of really connecting with her and seeing this is a tough chick. I mean, she was fighting tooth and nail. She wasn't going to go down without a fight. She watched Andrea fight down these walkers with the butt of a gun and with her arm. Like, she was kicking and screaming. Like, she was like, no. And she's like, okay, this chick, this is a fighter. I can hang with this. You know, I'm not going to have to take care of her too much. And so it was really that sort of a thing where she needed people, and she knew that. And then it became bigger. And then the next thing you saw was her connecting with the Rick group. But she knew she needed people.
All right.
Thank you.
So we've got about 3 minutes left, so we could probably only take about 1 or 2 more questions.
Hello. So I was wondering, if a zombie apocalypse actually happened, which of the actors from The Walking Dead would you want by your side?
Oh, come on. They're all useful, you know? They're all very useful in different ways. If you think in a real, like pragmatic sense, each of them would have their uses. I mean, Herschel could take care of you when you're not well, which could happen a lot. You know, Beth could sing for you and take care of the offspring. Carol could give you strategies.
Would you pick Rooker because he said you were hot?
No, I would pick Rooker because if I made him, aligned to my leadership, he's a pretty useful guy to have.
There you go. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if a zombie apocalypse situation actually happened. Where would you go? Like a Fallout or whatever?
I would lock myself in a super target.
All right.
Hi,
Hi. You don't watch this show.
Yes, I do.
Oh my God.
You do.
How old are you?
10.
Okay, at least double digits all. You got double digits.
I was wondering if you had any similar characteristics to Michonne or similar things that you would relate to.
Yeah, I think she's. I think we're both tough girls. I think I don't like injustice as much as she doesn't. So I don't know if that would be my exact approach to handling the governor, but I understand her desire to getting back at him for trying to take her life, and taking her best friend. And I think that we're both. We're both strong girls. We don't like to go down without a fight, but we both actually have a lot of heart, and that's what I enjoy about. Well, we'll see how that plays out for Michonne, and I'll stop there.
You got the last question. Thank you.
Woo, that was fun.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys. I want your T-shirt. All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. It's been really fun. Thank you.